Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. For anyone new to the channel, nice to see you here with us. I post anime what if videos either never heard before, or reboot into a more clear audio. I present to you all, what if Tanjiro was a demon? Tanjiro Kamado was attacked by Muzan on his way home and turned into a demon. He manages to regain his humanity, but is soon decapitated by Water Hashira, Ju Tomioka. However, Tanjiro regenerates because unlike every other demon, he was resistant to sunlight. After running away from home, Tanjiro must adapt to life as a demon while avoiding both Muzan and the demonslayer core. Read and review please. The link of the creator will be in the link down below. If you like this video and want to see more, make sure to like and subscribe to see more anime what if stories. A boy ran through the woods at inhuman speeds. He was confused, he was alone, he was terrified, he was starving. His only company were the many trees and the snowflakes falling through the air. Tanjiro. He heard a voice come from behind him. He knew it came from that girl, the girl in the pink kimono. That name, Tanjiro, why did she keep calling him that? It's not like they knew each other. Granted, the boy didn't know exactly what his name was. But he knew he had no memory of this girl. But, if that's the case, why didn't he just eat her when he had the chance? He wanted to feast on her. Oh, he wanted so badly to feast. But, something deep inside of him told him that it was wrong. Why, though? He was hungry, so of course he wanted to eat. Is it really a crime to eat when you're hungry? It wasn't any different from people hunting animals for food. Back in that town, he could smell so many people. He could have eaten them all, he wanted to eat them all. But, deep down, he knew it was wrong. Tanjiro. Come back. Damn it, this girl was persistent. Was she mocking the boy or something? He had her right in her grasp back at the clinic, but he suddenly ran away. He had no clue why he was running away from his meal. It was like his body had a mind of its own. It was like he wasn't in control. No, that's wrong. It felt more like he was actually regaining control over his body. Not losing it. Why? Why was this girl following him? Why did the boy want her to stay away? Why did he want to hurt people? Why did he not hurt people? Why was he crying? He stopped running as he held his head between his hands, shaking it in frustration. He fell on his knees while pulling on his black, burgundy-tipped hair. He could smell the girl behind him getting closer and closer and closer. He tried to collect his thoughts, having little success in doing so. What felt like an eternity was actually 14 seconds before. Tanjiro. There it was, that voice, that unknown yet familiar name. The boy got up and turned to see the girl in the pink kimono. Panting from exhaustion. The boy picked up the scent of fear and dread from her, but she also gave off the scent of concern and love. Just like that woman he bit into earlier. How anyone could love someone who tried to kill them, he had no idea. But that wasn't important now. The two stared at each other for what felt like hours before the girl broke the silence. Tanjiro, I know it's you. The 13-year-old boy named Tanjiro Kamado made no response. He only stared at the 12-year-old girl named Nezuko Kamado with plum-red, slit-pupiled eyes. The eyes of a demon. Please, big brother. Screen cuts to black. Please come back to us. Chapter 1, The Boy Who Never Made It Home. Nezuko Kamado. Mount. Kumatori. Thank goodness, I was finally able to get Rokuta to sleep. Nezuko thought as she made her way up the mountain path to her house. She looked at her youngest brother, Rokuta, who was asleep on her back all wrapped up in a blanket. Hey, Nezuko. A familiar voice got Nezuko's attention. She looked up the mountain path and immediately spotted her older brother's signature black and green checkered Haori. Tanjiro was waving at her from a distance, carrying the basket he used to sell coal on his daytime visits to town. Hi Tanjiro. Nezuko replied while returning the wave. Tanjiro made his way to the younger sibling. What are you doing here? Tanjiro asked. I was just putting Rokuta down for a nap. He's become real clingy ever since Dad died, and I didn't want him knowing that you were leaving. Nezuko explained as she looked back at Rokuta again. People seem to follow you wherever you go, huh? Nezuko said as Tanjiro patted Rokuta on the head. Nezuko looked back at her brother and slightly frowned. Do you really have to go? With all you've done for us, I'm sure we can survive for one day. Who knows what might happen to you with all that snow? Nezuko said, earning a smile from Tanjiro. Of course I do. As the eldest sibling, it's my job to make sure my brothers and sisters' bellies are full for New Year's. Tanjiro stated as Nezuko sighed. You push yourself way too hard, you know that? Nezuko said as she decided to give up. Just be careful, okay? Tanjiro gave his signature smile, a smile that was as bright and warm as the sun. I promise, I'll be home before nightfall. You better. Nezuko pouted, or else, you're gonna get earful from me. Tanjiro laughed nervously before saying his goodbyes and leaving. And so help me, if you get a cold, I'm tying you to your futon again so you can rest. Tanjiro slightly jumped after hearing that, likely remembering when Tanjiro insisted on going down the mountain despite being sick and Nezuko had to tie him down with a rope to stop him. Gee, got it. See ya. Tanjiro called out while waving. Nezuko returned the wave as she smiled brightly. Sigh, you really are something else, big brother. Nezuko said to herself before continuing her walk home once she wasn't able to pick up his scent anymore. Nezuko always had an advanced sense of smell from as far back as she could remember. Tanjiro also had an advanced nose, though his was stronger and more efficient than hers. She finally made it to the Kamado household and was welcomed by two of her younger siblings, Hanako and Shigeru. Big sis, you're back. Hanako greeted first while jumping with joy. Where've you been? You just missed Tanjiro. Shigeru said, also excited to see their older sister. I was just on a walk. Putting Rokuta to sleep. I just passed by Tanjiro. Nezuko explained while patting the heads of her little brother and sister. Shigeru looked at Nezuko's back and saw the toddler in question. Hey there, little guy. How are you doing? Shigeru asked the sleeping boy as Hanako joined him. Ah, he's adorable. Hanako exclaimed as Nezuko lowered herself so they could pat Rokuta's head. Nezuko looked up to see her mother, Kamado, standing at the door to their house and smiling. Thank you for putting Rokuta to sleep, I really appreciate it. No problem, Mom. I'm happy to help. Nezuko said, returning the smile. She got up and walked towards her mother. Did you see your brother off? Ki asked. Yep. He promised to be back by nightfall. And I plan to hold him to that. Nezuko said with a bright smile despite her malicious intent. Ki put on a nervous smile. Yes, well, please take it easy on him. He works much too hard, but he does it for us. I know, I just get a little worried sometimes. Nezuko admitted, frowning a bit before Ki cupped her face with both hands. We all do, sweetheart. But Tanjiro has gone down the mountain with your father more times than I can count. I think he can take care of himself. Ki assured the preteen before giving her forehead a kiss. Yeah, maybe you're right. I'm being paranoid. Nezuko admitted, her smile returning. Besides, with Tanjiro's nose, it's nearly impossible for someone to get the drop on him. Well, tell you what. How about you help me make lunch? That should take your mind off it. Ki offered. Sure. Oh, did Tanjiro already have lunch? Nezuko asked. Her mother nodded. Yes, he said he had a few rice balls. He tried very hard to hide his face when he said that. She added. Nezuko kept smiling as a tick mark appeared on her forehead. Tanjiro was many things, a good liar was not one of them. In fact, every time he attempted to lie, his face would contort as he strained to get it out. Ah, I see. The two ladies went into the house before Nezuko turned around and called to Shigeru and Hanako. Shigeru, Hanako, get the rope ready please. Yes, ma'am. The two kids yelled out, knowing exactly what Nezuko was going to do to their older brother when he got back. Tanjiro Kamado. Bottom of the mountain. Achoo! Tanjiro sneezed as he finally made it to town from the mountain path. Someone must be talking about me, Tanjiro said to himself as he rubbed the underside of his nose with his left index finger. Alright, time to sell this coal, Tanjiro announced to no one in particular as he made his way to town. A few hours later, Tanjiro was content with his earnings. He managed to sell all of the coal. He made multiple runs to make sure he didn't miss anyone. He also took the time to help the civilians in town, who were more than happy to accept his help. There wasn't a single person in town who didn't know about Tanjiro's kind acts. He helped people with chores, groceries, fixing doors, you name it. Of course, that made the trip longer than usual, but it was worth it. That was until he looked up and saw the dark orange sky. Looks like it'll be nightfall soon. I better hurry back before the others get worried, Tanjiro said to himself, remembering his promise to Nezuko. Ever since their father, Tanjiro Kamado, passed away, Tanjiro had been picking up the slack. Of course, for a young teen, that was no easy task. Tanjiro constantly pushed himself despite the pleas from his family to rest. He would always say that he was fine no matter how tired or sore he was. One may think that he was lying, but he really was fine. At least, that's what he believed. But when one day, Tanjiro came home sick and continued pushing himself, Nezuko put her foot down. After that, she became very strict when Tanjiro pushed himself too hard. Sadly, that didn't stop the boy from working himself ragged from time to time. Tanjiro went to buy those goodies that he promised Shigeru and Hanako. He'd also get some for Takeo, Nezuko, and toys for Rokuta. He put all of his things along with his earnings in the basket he had on him. The sky started to become black as Tanjiro was almost at the start of the mountain path. That's when he picked up a new scent. Tanjiro froze in shock. This smell was unlike anything he'd experienced before. It seemed like it came from a human. But it felt like a monster. Tanjiro sensed that the smell was coming from behind the rows of houses on the right of him. Tanjiro wanted to see what it was, but he decided against it, not wanting to cause trouble. But as he started to walk away, he tripped on a pebble and fell face first into the snow. Ow! He mumbled as he lifted his face. He got up and checked his basket to make sure nothing fell out. Everything seemed to be in place. Wait, where's Dash? Meow. Tanjiro turned around to see a stray black cat holding in its mouth what appeared to be a candy bar he got for Shigeru. Hey, kitty! Tanjiro called out with a smile on his face, trying to reach out for the candy bar. I know you're hungry. But that isn't good for cats. Could you give it here, please? The cat stared at Tanjiro for a bit before running away from him. Hey! Get back here! Tanjiro yelled as he gave chase, leaving the basket behind. Normally, he wouldn't care about a little candy bar, but he didn't want that cat to choke on it by accident. He hated to see animals suffer. The cat ran around behind the rows of houses on the right and Tanjiro followed. Tanjiro was starting to catch up and made a dive for it. He grabbed the cat's tail as it yelped and let go of the candy. It ran off before giving Tanjiro a hateful hiss. Well, at least the cat's not too hurt. Tanjiro grabbed the candy bar and turned around to head back before accidentally bumping into someone's shoulder mid-turn. Oh. I am so sorry. I got distracted and didn't notice you, Tanjiro said to the figure he bumped into. He was a tall man with black wavy hair, a black tuxedo, white dress pants, and a white fedora. The man had his back turned to Tanjiro as he realized something. This man was where that malicious scent was coming from. Tanjiro felt his blood freeze and heart stop as the man gave off an angry, annoyed scent. The man turned around and gave a close-eyed smile that almost looked sincere. Why, that's quite all right, young man, the man said in a deep voice that commanded respect, no fear. If anyone should apologize, it's me. Tanjiro struggled to get his words out. What was this feeling he was having? Tanjiro knew he had to get away as fast as possible. Well, there's no need for that. But, I have to get going. Sorry again. Tanjiro apologized as he slowly backed away before the man started opening his eyes. I see. Well, fareway. The man cut himself off as his eyes suddenly widened. Suddenly, the scent of anger increased tenfold. Tanjiro almost passed out from the intense pressure coming from the man who scowled at him. His body felt like it was being crushed. He began spitting up blood from the force. The blood stained Tanjiro's blue scarf as he barely had enough strength to look up and get a good look at the man's face. The man was extremely pale, almost to the point that Tanjiro worried for his health. But the most terrifying detail was the man's plum red, sharp, almond-shaped eyes that pierced the boy's soul. Tanjiro begged his body to move, but he was completely paralyzed with fear. Those earrings. So, you're the one. The man said before vanishing. Tanjiro was still frozen as he felt a hand on left shoulder. Sorry, boy. But I can't just let you go now. The man whispered as Tanjiro gathered the strength to turn his head. He barely saw the man on top of him before he gave a left backhand right into Tanjiro's burn scar. Tanjiro was sent flying into the woods, his blue scarf coming off during the trip. He only stopped when his back hit a tree with tremendous force and he fell face first from at least 10 feet. He could feel that most of his ribs had been broken and struggled to breathe. His spine also seemed to be broken as he could no longer feel his lower body. Tanjiro lifted his head to reveal blood pouring down from the top of his skull over his scar. He had to use only his arms to get up and lay against the tree he crashed into. What just happened? Tanjiro wondered as he started to panic. There's no way he was human, there's just no way. Suddenly, the pale man appeared before him in a flash, to Tanjiro's surprise. I couldn't even sense him coming. How fast is he? Disappointing. The man said as he looked down on the wounded boy. You're supposed to be his descendant, and yet I've seen Mizunoto put up more of a fight. Descendant, Mizunoto? What is he talking about? Tanjiro asked himself as he struggled to get his voice out. Tanjiro tried to call for someone, anyone. Help. Swipe. Before Tanjiro could finish, his voice was caught in his throat as he felt a warm liquid pour down his neck. That's when the pain kicked in. Tanjiro started gagging and coughing, his hands instinctively holding his neck as he tried to stop the bleeding with no success. The boy didn't even realize that the pale man had just slit his throat. Blood shot out of Tanjiro's mouth with every cough as the man held a finger to his lips and shushed him. Sorry, but we can't have that now, can we? I'd hate to have to kill an innocent person for interrupting us. And I have a feeling you don't want that either. The man stated. Tanjiro knew he was right about that, he didn't want someone to die because of him. Those words almost made Tanjiro scold himself for doing something so selfish. However, he had bigger problems than a scolding as he tried so hard to stop the bleeding from his neck. The man squatted down in front of the boy and looked him in the eyes. Oomph, pathetic. It seems I was worried over nothing. The man said before lifting a finger and pointing it at Tanjiro's forehead. However, since you are his descendant, I may still have a use for you. As a demon, that is. He said before giving Tanjiro a cruel smile. A demon? Tanjiro thought. His grandmother had always told him stories about demons. Man-eating humanoid monsters who only came out at night. But, she also said that demons weren't real, that there are no demons, right? The man placed the sharp nail on his pointing finger on Tanjiro's forehead. After a little effort, the nail pierced Tanjiro's tough head. Tears started falling from his eyes as a tiny bit of blood ran down his forehead. Every part of him was shaking. Was he really about to die? Now, just relax. It'll all be over soon. The demon made a mock attempt to console the boy as something seemed to be running through blood vessels to his finger. And remember, this will hurt you a lot more than it hurts me. Bah dump. Tanjiro's eyes widened as all his bodily functions ceased for a second. Veins started bulging from Tanjiro's head. Then, once again, that's when the pain kicked in. Tanjiro's whole body started spazzing out as he fell to his right side from his previous position against the tree. Tanjiro couldn't decide on whether to hold his head or his neck, as both felt like they were on fire. He rolled onto his belly and tried desperately to crawl away from the demon, but that only made the man laugh. Ha ha ha. Oh, that's adorable. The poor little human is trying to escape from me. The man mocked as he continued laughing. Sorry to tell you, but you can't escape me now. My blood is inside your veins and spreading throughout your body. Soon, you will become a demon, my loyal servant. Your thoughts, your actions, your memories, your will. They will no longer be your own. You will become an extension of my being. You shall live to serve under me, for the rest of eternity. Tanjiro tried to block out the demon's voice, he really did try. But he couldn't, something inside of him would not let him. He saw his nails start growing, until they turned into claws. He felt the canines of his teeth slowly grow into razor-sharp fangs. There was a burning in his right eye as the pupil went from a white circle to a black slit and the iris went from a dark red to a plum red like the demon speaking to him. It hurts. Tanjiro thought. It hurts to it hurts to it hurts, 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 it hurts. Don't be sad, you'll see that being a demon is so much better than being a weak human. One day, you will thank me. And who knows, you may become the one who conquers the sun. Tanjiro continued crawling until his body refused to listen to him anymore. He could feel himself slowly losing consciousness. Is this really it? Am I going to die? Tanjiro wondered sullenly as he began to lose hope. No, please, I can't die here, not yet, not like this. My family will be so sad, I can't let that happen. Tears continued filling Tanjiro's eyes as they began to close for good, blurring his vision. His left eye started to morph as he tried to cling on to his humanity. Mom, Dad, I'm so sorry, I'm so pathetic, I couldn't keep my promise to take care of my family. Tanjiro's left pupil became black and started to become thinner and sharper. He blinked and started to imagine his family right in front of him, smiling at him, welcoming him into their arms. He made one last push to stay alive and reached out to the hallucination, but he knew that it was pointless. Takeo, Hanako, Shigeru, Rokuta, Nezuko, I'm sorry. Tanjiro's eyes closed as his strength left his body and he collapsed face first into the cold snow. The flickering light inside Tanjiro faded away and was replaced by darkness. Your big brother isn't coming home. Tanjiro Kamado. A boy who brightened everyone's day with a shining smile that rivaled the sun. A boy who selflessly helped those in need, asking for nothing in return. A boy who did absolutely nothing to deserve such a cruel fate. Tanjiro Kamado. Was no more. Nezuko. Kamado household. Nezuko paced back and forth across the front door while the other Kamado kids were fast asleep. Well, not all of them. Sis, you're stressing me out. Please go to bed. Nezuko looked at her little brother, Takeo, who was staring at her from his futon. I'm sorry, Takeo. Nezuko sighed. I'm just worried. I thought Tanjiro was just running late because he was helping some old lady or lost kid or something. But it's not like him to be this late. I'm sure he's fine, he probably missed the time and decided to stay in town. Either way, Tanjiro wouldn't want either of us staying awake for him. Takeo said. Nezuko knew he had a point, but she still couldn't help but worry. What if Tanjiro had to stay in town because he injured himself or something? What if he slipped and fell off of a cliff on the way home and now has a broken leg? There were just too many possibilities for her to relax. She wished that she had a way to know he was okay. She had gone outside and sniffed the air for over an hour, trying to pick up Tanjiro's scent until her mother begged her to come inside along with Takeo, who had been chopping wood all afternoon. He's probably right, Nezuko. You're overthinking it. Nezuko heard her mother say as she came back from her bath. Tanjiro's a big boy now, we need to trust him. I do trust him, Mom. it's just, you know how he is. As far back as I can remember, Tanjiro has been the type of person to listen to other people's problems without ever acknowledging his own. Nezuko said. Yes, you're certainly right about that. Ki sighed before smiling at her eldest daughter. But even Tanjiro is smart enough to know his own limits. It's most likely he's just staying with the townsfolk for the night. They're good people, Nezuko, who all care for your brother. If you ask me, he might be safer down there than he would be here. Nezuko returned her mother's smile. She could always make Nezuko feel better without fail. It was one of the things she and Tanjiro had in common, besides the rock-hard forehead. Ki took Nezuko's hands into her own. Now, come on. Let's head to bed. I'm sure Tanjiro will get here in the morning. If not, you and I will go down and see if he's alright. Right. Nezuko replied. She got into her futon before giving her sleeping siblings a good-night kiss. She gave one to Takeo too, who did not appreciate it despite the blushing. Before Nezuko fully went to sleep, however, she noticed that her mother was staring at the door with an uneasy look on her face. Nezuko had always heard about a mother's intuition and how mothers had some sort of telepathic connection with their children that let them know when they were in danger. Nezuko knew it was a lie, of course, but she always did wonder if there was some truth to that fact. Her mother looked as if she knew something was wrong. Nezuko tried to ignore it and go to bed. She was sure that everything was just fine. Meanwhile, the Demon King looked down upon the human boy who had ceased all movements. Once he confirmed that the boy's heart had stopped beating, he sighed in frustration. What an absolute waste of my time, said the demon whose name was none other than Muzan Kibutsuji. I didn't even give him that much blood, and he died almost immediately. Muzan spat on the weakling's corpse before turning around and walking away. Neikaim. I'm done here. He called out before hearing the sound of a biwa cord being struck and a door appeared before him. I'd search for the boy's family, but they'd probably die as well, and I've wasted enough time here already. I guess I'll never be able to create a demon who can conquer the sun. Muzan thought as he walked through the door and vanished with the sound of a biwa cord. The next day dash. The town was experiencing another peaceful morning. Kids were playing in the streets, couples were ogling at each other, everyone else went about their own business. Yep, another ordinary day, except for one thing. Hey, what's this basket doing here? Does this belong to anyone? A shop owner asked out loud, drawing everyone's attention to a basket with arm straps and a bunch of goodies inside. One guy in his early 20s looked into the basket. I don't know, but finders keepers, he said before reaching for the yen in the basket, but a woman around his age smacked his hand. Don't you even think about it, she scolded before observing the basket. Isn't this the basket Tanjiro uses when he sells coal here? Another man who was in his 30s came by. Don't be ridiculous, we don't know it's his. Anyone could have a basket like that, and it doesn't even have coal in it, he stated. That's when a young man in his mid-teen years stepped up. I don't know, I did hear Tanjiro say something about buying gifts for his siblings when he sold coal to my family yesterday. People gathered around to solve the mystery of the basket. Maybe he was in a rush to get home and forgot about it? I doubt Tanjiro's the type of person who'd forget to bring his siblings gifts. Let's just bring the basket to the Kamado house, it's the least we could do. But what if Tanjiro stayed overnight with someone here and is coming to get the basket? Then he would have come and gotten it by now. Stop complaining, you just don't want to be the one to carry it. While this was going on, old man Saburo was observing the whole thing. What a bunch of idiots. Instead of gathering around for a basket, how about you just bring the damn thing to Tanjiro? Saburo decided to walk back to his house to eat breakfast, when he noticed footprints in the snow leading behind the rows of houses. The old man's curiosity got the better of him as he started following the prints. He noticed the prints of large winter boots and what he guessed was a cat. Could these be Tanjiro's footprints? Saburo asked himself as the prints came to a sudden stop in a small circle. That's odd, I didn't see any prints trailing back. Saburo looked around for a bit until he spotted a blue scarf in the snow. He immediately recognized it as Tanjiro's. Why is his scarf here of all places? Saburo wondered before he noticed what looked like a red stain on it, a trace of blood. Oh no! Saburo saw a small trail of blood near where the scarf was and followed it. The trail got wider, slowly but surely. Saburo continued following the trail, his worry increasing and imagination running wild. Saburo was panting as he finally reached his destination. And his fears were confirmed. Saburo froze as he looked at the brutal scene in horror. First, there was a tree with a dent in the middle of its stem and a bunch of blood around the bottom. However, that wasn't what terrified him. What did was the long trail of blood that almost resembled crawling. The trail led to a sight Saburo would never unsee. Tanjiro laid on the snow, face down, his hands covered in blood. His body and hair were slightly covered by the falling snow. Tanjiro! Saburo said as he rushed to the boy's side. He shook him to wake him up. When that didn't work, he flipped Tanjiro's body over onto his back. That's where the real damage was. Tanjiro's burnt scar was covered in dry blood, and instead of a graze, it changed into some strange red pattern. There were 3 claw marks across Tanjiro's throat, along with some dry blood around his mouth and forehead. And to top it all off, he was deathly pale. Damn it, kid! Stay with me. Saburo continued shaking the boy before putting his ear to Tanjiro's chest. Ba dump. Saburo gave a sigh of relief as he heard a heartbeat. It was weak and slow, but it was there. There was also a quiet, raspy breathing coming from him. Shit! Saburo cursed as he started running back to town. Back in town. Come on. Put your back into it. One guy cheered as one of the younger men of the town tried to lift Tanjiro's basket, goodies and all. I'm putting everything into it, the young man said, struggling to even get the basket off of the ground. How strong is that kid anyway? Everyone. The civilians all looked to old man Saburo, who was running from behind the houses. Come quick. It's Tanjiro. He's wounded. There was a gasp from the crowd as most of the men followed Saburo. Dear God! One of the men said as they observed Tanjiro's cold, barely alive, body. Who could have done this? Maybe it was a bear or a pack of wolves? Another of the men suggested. Not even bears nor wolves are that brutal nor precise. And they definitely aren't strong enough to launch someone 20 meters into the woods. The first man responded. Saburo had to agree, there is only one creature that could do something like this. The same kind of creature that took his wife and kids away so many years ago. No doubt about it, this was the work of a demon. Well! Saburo yelled at the men who all jumped at his voice. Are you gonna stand there, slack-jawed, or are you gonna help me carry this kid to the clinic? All right. The men said as 3 each took one of Tanjiro's limbs, with Saburo taking the 4th, and lifted him up, trying to keep him as steady as possible. Hey, you! Saburo called out to the shop owner from this morning. Go let the Kamados know what happened. You got it, he said as he started running towards the mountain path. Ki Kamadu. On the mountain path. Ki woke up to find that Tanjiro had not arrived yet, confirming her belief that Tanjiro stayed in town. At least, that's what she hoped. That's why she decided to go down there herself along with Nezuko, whom she promised to bring along. Ki was certain that her son was fine, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She frowned at the thought of something happening to her firstborn. Mom? Ki was snapped out of her thoughts by Nezuko. Are you okay? You seem a little out of it. Ki smiled at her eldest daughter. Of course, Nezuko. I'm just tired is all, she assured the preteen. Don't worry, Mom. It's like you said, he probably just stayed overnight. Nezuko consoled the mother of 6. Yes, of course, she agreed. But then suddenly, Ki! The 2 females heard a man yelling out to them and saw a man running up the mountain path. Ki recognized the man as the local shop owner in town, Mr. Otakawa. "Good morning, Mr. Otakawa. To what do I owe the pleasure dash?" Before Ki could finish her greeting. "It's Tanjiro. He's hurt really bad," the man said, earning a gasp from Nezuko and a shocked look from Ki. "Where is he?" was all she said as the shop owner led them to town. All the way to the clinic. During the whole trip, Ki prayed that she was wrong about her bad feeling. Local clinic outside of Tanjiro's room. The clinic didn't look much different than your average house in Japan. A few sliding doors, pretty designs, a few rooms. The only difference was the medical equipment in some of the rooms. I managed to get my hands on some of the newest X-ray technology and scan Tanjiro's bones, the doctor told Ki, who broke into a cold sweat. "And?" she asked, earning an earnest sigh from the doctor. "I'm not gonna lie, Mrs. Kamadu. It's not looking too good. A minor skull fracture, 7 broken ribs, a broken spine, and not to mention all the blood he's lost. He also seems to be suffering from hypothermia after spending the night in the snow," he explained as Ki's heart sank more and more. "You can save him, can't you, doctor?" Ki asked hopefully, trying to hold back tears. "I'll do my best, miss. But..." the doctor sighed again. "But, I'm no miracle worker. That boy is lucky to still be breathing. We can't be sure that he won't pull through, but we can't be sure he will either." Ki lowered her head and stared at the ground as the doctor continued. "I'm not trying to bring you down. Just try not to get your hopes up is all." "I understand, thank you, doctor. I'll make sure you are paid handsomely for your troubles," Ki offered, to which the doctor shook his head. "That won't be necessary. Your son's helped me out a bunch of times before without ever being asked or compensated. It's time I returned the favor," the doctor said with a small smile. "Yes, thank you very much," Ki replied, forcing a smile of her own until the doctor walked away to grab some medicine and equipment he ordered this morning. Once again, she was proud of her little boy. Of course, hearing that only made her want to cry more. She felt so guilty. Last night, she slept with her family without a care in the world while Tanjiro, her first child, was suffering. She was a failure as a mother and as a person. She wished it had been her instead, but she knew that's not what Tanjiro would want. She then heard the door to Tanjiro's room slide open to reveal a teary-eyed Nezuko. Ki caught a quick glance at Tanjiro. The doctor was right, it wasn't looking good. Tanjiro's breathing was slow and raspy, and his skin was pale. Tanjiro's Haorian robes were undone to reveal his chest, which was covered in bandages. His neck and forehead were also covered in bandages. "Mom!" Nezuko mumbled as she closed the door behind her and walked towards Ki, who went to give her a hug. Nezuko returned the hug and cried into the woman's shoulder. "Mommy! I am scared." Nezuko sobbed as she clung to her mother. "I know, baby. I know, but it'll all be okay, we'll get through this together. I promise." Ki swore as she held her daughter tightly, one arm stroking the back of her head and the other wrapping around her shoulders. "How's the kid doing?" They both heard a voice and turned to see Mr. Saburo come up from behind the two. "Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt." "No, it's fine. Tanjiro's." Ki struggled to tell the truth about Tanjiro as she let go of Nezuko. She finally gave a sad sigh. "Tanjiro's hanging in there, but it's still up in the air. Don't worry, Mrs. Kamadu. He'll make it, I'm certain. The kid's tough. If he managed to survive that long in the cold with those injuries, there's no doubt that he'll keep fighting," Saburo stated. "Thank you, we appreciate that," Ki said with a sad smile before turning to Nezuko. "Nezuko, can stay with your brother, I need to talk with Mr. Saburo." Nezuko responded with a silent nod as Ki walked off with the elderly man near the entrance to the building. "I heard that you knew what caused this," Ki said. "Yes," he replied. "Tanjiro was attacked last night. He was attacked by a demon." "A demon?" Aren't those just myths? Ki asked, remembering all the stories her late mother used to tell. To her surprise, Saburo glared at her. They are not myths. They are the ones responsible for killing my family. Saburo snapped, causing Ki to back up in defense, to which Saburo sighed and held his head in his left hand. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to snap. You have enough going on right now without me going psycho. Saburo apologized sincerely. No, it's okay. It's clear that you yourself have been through a lot as well. I'm the one who should apologize. Ki said. The two stood in awkward silence for a bit until. Tanjiro? What are you doing? You shouldn't be up so soon. Go back to bed. Ki heard Nezuko's voice. Wait, Tanjiro? Ki and Saburo both ran to Tanjiro's room. Tanjiro. 5 minutes ago. What's happening? Tanjiro thought as his mind drifted through darkness. Where am I? Who am I? Tanjiro's body started shaking, his hands twitching as he started to get up. His torso rose as his head hung back, he unknowingly released a growl. His eyes rolled to the back of his head, revealing only the white, bloodshot scara. What am I? Tanjiro wondered before getting on his feet. He took an instinctive sniff of the air and picked up multiple scents. Some were far away, others were very close. He sensed at least over 100 people in the area. They all smelled delicious, it was like one big feast for him and him alone. Wait, why was he thinking like that? That didn't feel right coming from his mind. Then he realized why when his mouth started salivating. Oh, that's right, I'm hungry. Nezuko. Nezuko had no idea what to do, she felt so helpless. Her brother was at death's door, and all she could do was cry in her despair. Tanjiro, please don't leave us. She pleaded, seeming as if she was talking to herself. She stood next to the door to Tanjiro's room, trying to muster the strength to go in again. Then, suddenly, she picked up a change in Tanjiro's scent. She couldn't tell what it was, but she was hoping that her brother had woken up. She slid open the door to his room, and there he was. Tanjiro stood right in front of where the door was. Tanjiro? Nezuko knew immediately that something was wrong. First off, Tanjiro was not smiling and telling her that he was fine. Second, he looked down at the floor as his upper face was covered in shadow and his mouth hung open with a bunch of drool dripping from it. Lastly, Tanjiro's scent was completely different. Tanjiro's scent was always so sweet, brimming with kindness and warmth. That was no longer the case. All Nezuko could smell from Tanjiro was bloodlust and savage hunger, two scents that Tanjiro would never give off on his worst day. Despite that, it was still Tanjiro. Nezuko immediately put her hands on Tanjiro's shoulders. What are you doing? You shouldn't be up so soon. Go back to bed. She begged, not wanting him to push himself again. Tanjiro said nothing, he breathed heavily and slowly. Huan.gryyyyyy. He muttered almost too quietly for Nezuko to hear. Nezuko started to back away as she removed her hands from Tanjiro's shoulders. Tanjiro? Nezuko called out, her worry increasing. Suddenly, Tanjiro's salivating mouth morphed into a smile. Not the warm smile he would always give Nezuko and their siblings to feel better. No, this was a cold, sick, twisted grin that held nothing but malice behind it. Tanjiro tilted his head upwards and revealed his eyes. The dark red eyes that once held a gaze which always made Nezuko feel safe, were replaced by two plum red bloodshot eyes with black slits for pupils that felt like a gaze from the Grim Reaper himself. Nezuko froze, paralyzed with fear. She could only watch as her older brother crouched and tried to leap towards her. Nezuko would have died had it not been for Mr. Saburo, who pulled her out of the way just in time. Tanjiro leaped with his right hand held out. That's when Nezuko noticed the claws on his hands. Tanjiro struck the wall with tremendous force as his hand easily pierced through it. He pulled it out and glared at Nezuko, his mouth still drooling with that twisted smile. Tanjiro. Nezuko heard her mother beside her, who had a face of pure dread. She stepped towards Tanjiro before Mr. Saburo, who was holding Nezuko closely, intervened. Stop! Don't get near him! Nezuko looked up at her savior and noticed the panic in his face. He's a demon. Tanjiro. Memories began flooding into the demon's head. It was almost enough to overwhelm him. Slowly but surely, he remembered everything. His parents, his siblings, his life, all of it came back to him. As the boy finally realized who he was, the pain in his head stopped. He slowly looked up at the girl in front of him, tears falling from his eyes. nnez.ukko.n Nezuko. The demon named Tanjiro Kamado asked. That's right, he wasn't always some beast. He was Tanjiro Kamado, born to a family of coal merchants, eldest son of Tanjiro and Ki Kamado, older brother to 5 wonderful Sib. Nezuko smiled widely after hearing her name. T. Tanjiro. She replied as tears filled her eyes as well. What Tanjiro didn't realize was that his eyes had transformed once again. They weren't the same dark red eyes with white, round pupils, nor were they the plum red eyes with beaver pupils. His eyes became a pale pink color, his pupil returned to its round form but was now a slightly darker shade of pink compared to the iris. His eyes looked much softer. If a bit UNF I remember, it was that pale man from last night. He said he was a demon and was going to turn me into a demon too. Tanjiro thought as he observed the claws on his finger. He poked around the insides of his mouth and found that his canines had indeed grown longer and sharper. After taking his hands out, he saw blood covering his fingers. He remembered what he did in his rampage, how he tried to eat the woman who gave birth to him. Guilt came crashing down on Tanjiro as the boy turned demon fought the throw up. How could I do such a thing? To my own mother? Tanjiro asked himself as his face paled, not that it could pale much more than it had. Nezuko noticed this and stepped closer, but Tanjiro immediately backed away and held his hands up. Stay. Bbb back. Tanjiro commanded as he had difficulty speaking properly. Tanjiro, it's okay. We dash. Tanjiro interrupted Nezuko as she got closer to him, forcing the boy to back away again. D don want hurt yyu me hurt mom. Tanjiro tried his best to form a sentence. Fortunately, Nezuko got the message. Mom's fine, Tanjiro. It wasn't your fault, that wasn't you back there. You would never hurt her, you would never hurt anyone. Nezuko comforted her demonic brother with little peepleys. Nezuko. Forget, me. M monster. Tanjiro said as he lowered his head in shame. Stop it. Don't say that. Nezuko scolded angrily. That's not true, it's never been true and you know it. Tanjiro looked at his sister in shock. He felt slightly guilty for upsetting his sister so much. Nezuko took a deep breath as her smile returned. She offered her hand to Tanjiro as she stepped closer. Come on, let's go home. She said as Tanjiro looked at his kid sister like she'd grown 2 heads. I don't know what's happening to you, but I promise we'll get through this together. Soon, this will all seem like a bad dream. Nezuko promised as Tanjiro calmed down a little. So let's go home now, okay? Nezuko offered her hand again with the biggest smile she could genuinely muster. Tanjiro looked at his little sister's hand and smiled sadly. He was truly blessed to have such a wonderful family, he didn't deserve them. Tanjiro was about to take Nezuko's hand when suddenly, he picked up an unfamiliar scent. It was fast and approaching them. But Tanjiro couldn't pinpoint where it was coming. Nezuko must have also picked up the scent as she looked up behind Tanjiro and her eyes widened in horror. Before Tanjiro could ask what was wrong, his instincts made him turn his head to see a katana coming down onto his neck. Tanjiro. Behind yo dash. Was the last thing he heard before everything went black? Nezuko. Total concentration, water breathing, fifth form time seemed to slow down for Nezuko as the stranger who jumped from the forest swung his sword through Tanjiro's neck. Blessed rain. After the drought she heard a thud as she looked forward, where Tanjiro's head used to be. Big brother. Nezuko almost whispered as she felt Tanjiro's headless body fall on her chest. Tanjiro's hair laid on the ground after being cut off along with the head. She wrapped her arms around the back of Tanjiro's Haori as she clung onto his shoulders. Big brother, she repeated. She had a good look at the stranger in front of her. It was a man with long, messy black hair and blue, cold dead eyes. He wore a black uniform of some sort with a Haori over it, looked like two different Haoris stitched together. Nezuko's legs gave out as she continued to hold the unmoving body of her dear brother and fell on her knees. Big brother, she said again as the man looked down at her. Why are you holding that demon's body? The man asked with no hint of emotion whatsoever. Nezuko looked up at the stranger like he was insane, which he most likely was. This man just cut off her brother's head without a second thought, and now he had the nerve to ask why she clung onto his body. You killed him, he was my brother. He was my brother and you killed him. Nezuko said softly as she was still in shock. You called that thing your brother? The man asked as he stared blankly. That thing? That thing. Nezuko's shock slowly turned into anger. He was a human being. He did nothing wrong, you had no right to kill him. He wasn't a human, he was a demon. He was exposed to demon blood and transformed, that's how these man-eating beasts multiply. The man explained, doing nothing to ca the crying preteen. I am a demon slayer, my job is to kill any demon that I find on sight. So with that said, I have every right. If I let him live, he would have killed you and then run off to kill more. You're wrong. Nezuko snapped at the man who did not react to the outburst. He recognized me. He wasn't going to hurt me, he wasn't going to hurt anyone. Pathetic, did you really believe that? He could have been tricking you, trying to get you to lower your guard. Were you really willing to risk the lives of dozens of innocent people of your brother? You're as selfish as you are foolish. The man regarded Nezuko coldly as his eyebrows furrowed in anger. What? Of course not, Nezuko protested before the demon slayer continued. What would you have done if your brother ate someone? If that happened, you would have no one to blame but yourself. I just saved you from doing something incredibly stupid. One day, you'll thank me. At that moment, something inside of Nezuko snapped. Thank you. Thank you. That was the final straw. Nezuko laid down her brother's body before grabbing a fistful of stones and chucking them at the swordsman who blocked them all with his sword. Nezuko screamed at the top of her lungs as she charged her brother's murderer, rage fueling her actions. However, the man saw this coming from a mile away. He caught a sloppy roundhouse kick from Nezuko with his hand as he delivered a chop to her neck, effectively knocking him cold. Tanjiro. Tanjiro felt no pain as his head felt like it was floating in the air, being showered by a light rain. After hitting the snow, however, it wasn't long before Tanjiro opened his eyes in Nezuko's unconscious body next to his face. He was looking right at her as she had her eyes closed and breathed slowly. There were tears coming from her eyes. Tanjiro could only wonder who was responsible for such a tea. Tanjiro reached his arm to touch Nezuko's head and patted to let her know that everything was alright, at least he tried to. I can't move. What's going on? Tanjiro wondered before remembering the sword coming for his neck. No way was I really decapitated. Tanjiro could not feel anything below his jaw, it became very hard to breathe. Fortunately, it didn't seem like he needed to breathe. He tried calling out to his little sister, wanting to know if she was okay. Ju Tomioka. The demon slayer named Ju Tomioka looked down at the unconscious girl as he couldn't help but feel sorry for her. Then, he heard something unexpected. And Nizu.ko. Ju's eyes widened as he looked to where the sound came from. He saw the head of the demon he had just decapitated. It was calling out to the girl with a voice of genuine concern and sadness. Tears were actually falling from the demon's fa Nezuko.n Nezuko.nezukeo, Nezuko. The demon repeated the girl's name over and over again. Ju guessed that it wanted to know if Nezuko was alright. Stop worrying, she's fine. I just knocked her out, that's all. He said to the head, gaining its attention. Ju didn't see the point in communicating with a demon. But something that he couldn't just leave. Who dash? The demon spoke again, but Tomioka cut it off. My name isn't important, he said before addressing the more important matter. Why do you cry? Is it because you're dying, or does a monster like you actually have regrets? The demon head had a look of guilt. Hurt. Family. It admitted as Giyu was shocked. He went to pick up the head by its hair, which had been shortened by Giyu's swing, and up to his face. This demon, despite its lackluster attempts at speech, this demon in particular seemed more human than any other demon he'd seen. He even knew fellow slayers and Hashira were more monstrous than this kid. Well, you don't have to worry anymore. You won't be hurting anyone again, Giyu assured the demon, though was surprised when it gave him a sad smile. Gonna die, aren't I? It asked as if it wasn't surprised. Yes, I'm afraid that's the case. Sadly, there is no way a demon can turn back into a human. At least no known way. Giyu replied. It's my fault. If only I'd gotten here half a day sooner, you might have still been human. But, I can't turn back time. I'm sorry, this was the only way. He told the demon who kept it was clear that Giyu had the wrong idea about him before. He didn't regret what he did to the demon, but he couldn't help but feel bad. Understand please, don't apologize, and not your fault. The head said. What was up with this kid? Most demons cursed the demon slayer out before their death, the rest just whined about how their lives were horrible. But this demon. This boy had completely accepted his fate. Giyu wanted to believe that this was a trick, some desperate attempt at revenge to lower his guard and use the H-body to attack. However, the boy's face looked too genuine, too sincere. Could it be that he still had a piece of his humanity with him? What's your name? Mine is Giyu Tomioka, Giyu stated, not wanting the boy to give his name with nothing in return. The boy's smile grew a little wider. Tanjiro Kamadu. Tanjiro. You are one of the first demons I've met who've been able to hold on to their humanity for so long. I'm glad I was able to get here before you killed someone. Giyu sa hint of respect for the boy. Yeah. Mett2. Tanjiro replied. Can I make just 2 R requests? Giyu thought about denying it, but he knew he owed the kid. Sure, what is it? If you can, please watch over my family. I don't know if the demon who turned me will come back. Tanjiro stated. Giyu took another second to think. He couldn't just stay in one place forever, his job took him wherever he was needed. However, he knew Tanjiro had a point. Whoever turned him only targeted him and no one else, otherwise a lot more people would be dead. If this demon, whoever it was after his family, it'd definitely come back. I can't personally guard them, but I might be able to make a request to deploy more demon slay protect this town. But, I will also be sure to check in on them. Tanjiro seemed happy with that answer. Thank you. I know I'm asking a lot. My other request is my earrings, could you give them to my mother? They're a ff family he passed down from my father. Giyu nodded and carefully removed the Hanafuda earrings from the boy's ears. My mother H has a white kekapagi over a purple and sea cream checkered haori. Tanjiro's smile turned into a look of shame. She should also have a W wound on her shoulder. Tomioka understood the implications. You have my word, Tanjiro. I'll make sure your family is safe. Giyu swore as the warm smile returned to Tanjiro's face. Thank you. Mr. Tomioka. Tanjiro said as his head slowly started turning to ash. Giyu placed the boy's head gently on the ground. He went to pick up Nezuko's body and even took Tanjiro's haori from his headless body, wanting to leave his family with a memento of him. Giyu put Nezuko on his shoulder and carried the haori under his other arm, still holding the boy's earrings. He was about to head to town before looking back at the fading dim tears were pouring down his cheeks as he gave a massive grin, a grin that might have brought Tomioka to smile himself were it not for the circumstances. Please tell my family that I love them. That I hope they all live long happy lives, that they shouldn't be sad and keep smiling for me, I will always watch over them. Father. Tanjiro requested a third time, sobbing and sniffling between his pauses. Giyu nodded as the fading nearly reached Tanjiro's smile. "Thank you, Mr. Tomio Dash," was the last thing he said as his mouth faded away, leaving only his closed smiling eyes. Giyu knew the job was done, so he didn't bother waiting for the body to fully disappear as he turned around and leaped through the forest, leaving behind the demon. He prefers not to watch another innocent child die. Tanjiro had become a demon, but would die as a human, at least in his eyes. Giyu was content with that fact. "Tanjiro Kamado, I will remember your name and face. You are the first and possibly the last demon to ever earn my respect and sympathy." Giyu thought to himself as he NEA town at the bottom of the mountain, silently praying for the poor boy. Tanjiro. Looks like they're already gone. He was fast. Tanjiro thought in amazement, wondering how a normal human could accomplish such a feat. Tanjiro wasn't a fool, he knew that his body was disappearing. But he didn't care. He was just glad his sister was safe, and so was everyone else in town. Of course, that didn't mean he wasn't sad to leave his family so soon. He was much too young after all, he had barely lived. But this was for the best. He knew that they'd be fine without him, they'll figure something out. Before Tanjiro closed his eyes for the final time, he felt warmth on his skin. It seemed that a ray of sunlight had broken through the clouded sky and shined on Tanjiro. Tanjiro widened as he stared into the sun. "The sun, it's so beautiful," Tanjiro said in his head as he admired the shining star one last time. The fading had almost reached his tear-filled eyes. The rest of Tanjiro's separated body had almost completely disappeared as well. Ashes rose from his robes as parts of his clothing started to deflate. "Father, I'm sorry, but I'll be joining you a little sooner than expected. I hope that's all right with you," Tanjiro thought as he closed his eyes and awaited his death. Tanjiro's eyes were the next to go as his vision turned to complete darkness. This was truly the end of Tanjiro Kamado, daughter, so it seemed. As the fading reached Tanjiro's new scar, said scar started glowing as it heated up. That's when the fading suddenly stopped. After a while, the ashes blew away before Tanjiro's demonized body started to regenerate. The afterlife. Tanjiro opened his eyes and looked around to see a black landscape covered in a mysterious mist. He looked down at his appearance and saw that he had his original attire from when he left home yesterday. His claws were gone, his teeth were a normal size, and his eyes returned to normal. However, his scar hadn't changed back. Tanjiro noticed a light to the right of him, it was bright and warm. Tanjiro felt drawn towards the light, but he looked in the other direction and saw hot burning flames that made it unsafe. So, this is heaven and hell, Tanjiro realized as he turned towards the bright light again. He then noticed a figure manifest in front of it. "Indeed, my boy. This is the entryway to the afterlife," Tanjiro Kamado said to his eldest son. Tanjiro almost broke into tears. "Father," Tanjiro called out as he tried to move towards him. But something got in his way. Tanjiro found that he couldn't move at all. He felt himself being pushed out, not just from heaven, but from the afterlife itself. Tanjiro gave a soft chuckle. "It seems that it is not your time just yet." Tanjiro was confused, he had just been decapitated, there was no way he was still alive. "Father! Father!" Tanjiro called out as he reached out to the figure before him as Tanjiro himself got dragged back to the earth. "I'm sorry, Tanjiro. I truly wish we had more time to catch up. But your destiny lies elsewhere. Remember, son, I will always be proud of you." Back in the forest, Tanjiro gasped as he shot back up to his feet, his hands reaching for his neck. He soon realized that something was off. He looked down at himself and saw that he had his original attire, minus his haori and scarf. He reached for his ears and knew that his earrings were gone. And of course, his boy is whole again. Okay. So I didn't just imagine that, then, Tanjiro thought. He was no longer decapitated nor fading away. He felt his hair and realized that it hadn't regenerated as much and he became much shorter. Not only that, but he felt much more energetic and in control. Despite initially having one foot in the grave, he never felt more alive. Not even when he first woke up as a demo felt so good, so strong. But that wasn't important. What was important was how he managed to survive. Tanjiro closed up his robes, which were still open, exposing his chest. When he realized the fact that he was still alive, he almost started sprinting towards town to let his family know that he was okay. But he stopped himself from doing so. I might be able to control myself now, but how do I know I won't go berserk again? I can't risk hurting more people. Tanjiro thought as he started giving up on the hope that H go back to his old life. I could find Mr. Tomioka, but he'd probably kill me again. Even if that means that no one else will get hurt. The truth is I really don't want to die. Tanjiro admitted to himself, ashamed at his selfishness. He had just gotten another chance at life and he didn't want to waste it. He thought about running away from town, from everything. That's when Tanjiro looked at the ground and realized something heartbreaking. My family, I can't go back to them, not like this. Tanjiro thought as he remembered something Tomioka said. Sadly, there is no way a demon can turn back into a human. At least no known way. Tears filled Tanjiro's pink eyes once again. I can never go back, can I? Mom, Rokuta, Hanako, Shigeru, Takeo, Nezuko. I'll never see them again. Tanjiro fell to his knees as he sobbed uncontrollably. Like he was a little kid again. He would have to spend the rest of his existence without being able to go back home. He would never be able to read more stories to Hanako and Shigeru, he would never be able to pat Takeo on the head and tease him, he would never be able to cradle Rokuta slept, he would never feel the warm embrace of his mother, and he would never look at Nezuko's wonderful smile as she welcomed him home. All of the people that made Tanjiro's life so wonderful were all gone from his life. Forever. He was truly alone. Humans would fear him for being a demon, demons would likely due to his distaste in eating humans. There was no one he could turn to. Then, the faces of his loved ones flashed through his mind as new determination made its way into his mind. No! I can't just give up. Tanjiro told himself as he wiped his tears with his sleeves. There has to be a way to turn myself back into a human. I'll find a way, somehow. Tanjiro got back onto his feet and looked in the direction in which he left town. After a moment of silence, he turned around and walked. He kept walking and walking and walking. Where he was going, he had no idea. But that didn't matter to him at the moment. I promise, I will become human again. And when I do, I'll come back. It'll be just like it used to be. But, for now. This is goodbye. Tanjiro knew that his family would think he was dead, and maybe that'd be for the best. If they knew Tanjiro was still alive, they would definitely search for him. Especially Nizu. Tanjiro continued walking, never once looking back. Kamadu. Outside of the local clinic. Mrs. Kamadu, please. Your shoulder wound hasn't closed up yet. The doctor yelled out as he followed Ki outside of the clinic. Ki was running towards the forest where Tanjiro and Nezuko went, holding the stained bandages around her left shoulder as a bit of blood fell from it. Saburo followed the doctor. Listen to the doctor, Ki. You have to rest. He yelled, causing Ki to turn her head and glare at the two men. I'll rest as soon as I know my son and daughter are safe. Ki snapped as she turned back around and ran off. That was until a man appeared in front of her. The man had an intimidating aura with an intense gaze that almost made the woman tremble. He also had a sword tied to his hip. Ki was caught by surprise as she almost fell back on the ground. That won't be necessary, the man said as he took something off of his shoulders. Ki immediately knew who. The man gently placed Nezuko on the ground. Nezuko! Ki called out as she kneeled beside her daughter's unconscious body. She took her eldest daughter into her arms and sure she was breathing. Thankfully, Nezuko seemed all right. There were no injuries whatsoever, which made the woman confused on how Nezuko got like this. You are the mother of Tanjiro Kamadu, correct? The man asked. snapping Ki out of her thoughts as she looked up at the man. Why yes. My name is Ki Kamadu, did you see where my son went? She asked, eyes full of hope and worry. The man's hard gaze softened as he reached out his hands, signaling the same. I'm sorry. The man said before dropping one thing in each of Ki's hands. On her left, there was Tanjiro's signature green and black checkered Haori with blood staining the C her right. 2 Hanafuda earrings. Ki's heart stopped as dread nearly overwhelmed her. Her body began to shake as her breaths became raspy and panicked. You're son.is dead. Ki looked up at the man, praying that he was lying to her. But the man looked absolutely dead serious, disproving all doubts she had. She could feel the tears building up as Nezuko laid on her lap. How did this happen? She asked in shock. I found your son fighting off his demonic urges. I put him out of his misery before he could hurt anyone. He was very brave, even in the face of death. You should be very proud, swordsman said with genuine praise. Ki didn't have to be told to be proud of Tanjiro, she'd always been proud. Tanjiro was one of the kindest people in the entire world. She was blessed to have such a kind and se where's his body? Ki asked as the stranger once again softened his gaze. When demons die, their bodies completely disintegrate. There is nothing left to bury. Once again, I'm sorry, he said, driving the woman further into despair. This time, she was unable to stop the tears from falling as tried her best to hold off the sobs. She took Tanjiro's Haorian earrings and held them close to her chest. At that moment, Nezuko opened her eyes and her upper body instantly shot upward. Tanjiro! She yelled out, startling Ki. Nezuko got back on her feet and looked around in confusion. She then turned around to look at Ki, her eyes moved down towards the Haori and Hanafuda earrings and put two together. She walked towards her mother and fell on her knees. Ki became choked up as she gave her daughter a closer look at the remains of their loved one. Nezuko. I'm sorry, he's gone. Ki handed the Haorian earrings to Nezuko, who looked down at them and stared for what felt like hours until she too started crying. Tanjiro, she whispered, her tears falling onto her brother's belongings. She suddenly looked towards the swordsman and placed Tanjiro's things back into Ki's hands. It was you did this. Nezuko accused the man as his face remained unchanged. Nezuko got on her feet. You killed my brother, you killed him. Nezuko, Ki said silently as she looked up at her daughter. The rage in her eyes was enough to scare away most people around her. Nezuko started to walk up to the man. I hate you, I will never forgive you. Why? Why did you take him away from us? Nezuko said before charging at the man. For to grab her right arm and stop her. Damn you! You had no right. You hear me? No, right. Nezuko screamed while pointing an accusing finger at the swordsman who made no reaction. Ki pulled back the girl from doing something she would regret. Nezuko, please calm down. This isn't what Tanjiro would want. Nezuko stopped after hearing those words and looked back at Ki. They both stared into each other's tear-filled eyes as Nezuko started trembling and looked down at the ground. It's not fair. She muttered. He didn't do anything wrong. He never hurt anyone, that monster from before. It wasn't my brother. He didn't do anything wrong. Why did he die? Why? The three of them stood in silence as Saburo and the doctor decided not to interfere. Suddenly, the silence was broken by the swordsman. He left a message for you, he said, catching the attention of both mother and daughter. They both waited intently as the man started talking. He said that he loves you all, and that he hopes you all live long happy lives. That you shouldn't be sad and should keep on smiling for him. He said that he would watch over his father. Those were his final words. After a few seconds of contemplating those words, the two female Kamados broke down. They both embraced each other as they cried into each other's shoulders, sobs and moo damned. They stood like that for about a minute or three before they released each other and touched heads. Ki suddenly heard footsteps as she turned to see the swordsman walk out of them. Before either Ki or Nezuko could say a word, the swordsman leaped out of view, making it look as if he had disappeared. Ki and Nezuko stood there in silence until the mother took her daughter's left hand while holding her own wounded shoulder, which started hurting a little less. Let's go home, Ki said as Nezuko nodded sadly. The latter held Tanjiro's Hayori and the Hanafuda earrings in her right hand, refusing to part with them. They turned and walked towards the doctor, who had a concerned look on his face. Thank you for everything, doctor. We truly appreciate it, Ki mumbled before walking past Saburo. Ki held her daughter's hand as tightly as possible while stealing a few glances at her as they walked through town to the mountain path. Nezuko continued to look down at the ground, the top of her face covered in shadow. Ki looked forward as they slowly made their way back home. During the trip, Ki thought about how she was going to tell the little ones that their older brother was no longer with them. Tanjiro. Somewhere outside the forest. The snow stopped falling as Tanjiro saw green up ahead. It was becoming a little warmer. Tanjiro had reached the end of the forest. There were large, green fields as far as the eye could see. It seemed that it didn't snow everywhere, not even in winter. Tanjiro admired the scenery before him as he put a hand on the last tree at the edge of the forest before looking back one last time. Goodbye, everyone, Tanjiro whispered. I'll miss you guys. After that, Tanjiro stepped out of the shadows of the forest and took his first step into a new, but cruel world. That's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this part. If you want more, like this video, hit that notification bell, and maybe even give a comment on your thoughts on the video. With that being said, I'll see you all in the next part.